Earlier this week, the Supreme Court heard cases on affirmative action in education. At the center of the arguments are the University of North Carolina and Harvard University. Although the Supreme Court has upheld affirmative action as recently as 2016, with a conservative majority, things could be different this time around. And joining us this morning to break it all down is Natasha Robinson. She's the creator of Legalese Please. Thanks so much for coming in,
Thank
Natasha.
you for having me.
So to start, give us an idea of the law as it stands now and how universities can use race as a factor in the admissions process.
So the way that affirmative action is set up now is that it is the ability for colleges specifically and educational institutions to use race as one factor to be considered when applying for admissions, applying for a job. And affirmative action has been created in order to restore, if you will, the rights that may have been taken from those that have been considered to be inherently different because of their race, because of their gender, what have you. And so it's a restoration, if you will, of saying we recognize that in this country there are systems, there are systemic and systematic racist things that are in place, gender that are in place. And so we are trying to make sure that we right those wrongs through laws and policies.
So what are the arguments on both sides? And how does Brown v. Board of Education play into this?
Well, I'm glad you asked me that because of the fact that when we are talking about what the students who are the petitioners, what they are saying is that race is preventing us from getting a fair shot, an equal shot at being able to attend certain schools, certain universities. And then you have those on the other side that are saying the reason why we have affirmative action in place is to make sure that those who have been disenfranchised historically because of race, that they have an equal and fair shot as well.
So what did you get from the justices' reactions, questions, responses? Does it seem to indicate that they're going to strike this down?
Well, it seems that because of the 6-3 split, with the 6 being conservative justices that are sitting on the bench that have been appointed by different presidents, it seems through their questioning that they are poised to overturn this. You talked about Brown versus Board of Education in 1954. There are actually two. There's 1954, which struck down segregation, and then there is the second one in 1955, which says that when we are to implement all of these changes, that you are to do it with, quote, all deliberate speed, end quote. And so some of us have focused on the speedy part, making sure that integration is a part, and then some of us have focused on the deliberate part, which is that we are going to do it as deliberately as we believe or not believe in it. So I believe that the justices, as they are poised now, they are going to, if I were to predict it, I would say they would overturn it.
How has affirmative action changed the landscape in higher education? I guess a better question is, has affirmative action changed the landscape in higher education, and what would be the impact if it goes away?
Well, I would say that the data to be able to determine how affirmative action has been effective is to look at the people who have benefited from it, the people who are the data, such as myself, such as others who have had not just the playing field being leveled, but us being access to play in the first place. And so the effect that it has had in higher education is you have had quality people who have had barriers of bias being removed because they are able to get the shot that they couldn't get because of something that they cannot change, which is their race or their gender. So I feel that in higher education or in employment, there is going to be a change. Diversity, which is one of the key phrases that is being used in this conversation, is definitely going to be affected.
I'm glad you mentioned employment, because could this have a ripple impact beyond education?
It absolutely can. If we look back to when George Floyd was murdered in the year of 2020, how there was a rush to create DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion programs, not just in higher ed, but also in employment. And so when we have that threat of affirmative action being eradicated, then that is going to put employers and educators in a think space of, well, where do we go from here? How do we determine the effectiveness of what it is that we're doing if we cannot consider race to be a factor?
All right, Attorney Natasha Robinson, thank you so much for coming in this
Thank
morning.
you.
And for more information on her Legalese Please, you can visit legaleseplease.com. That's legalese_please on Instagram, and Legalese Please also on Twitter.
Yes. Thank you.
Hey, Tim.
Hey, Gaynor, yeah, very windy